So for this mini series, we've already done the center position and the right tackle position. I'll probably do one on like the wide receiver 4 or RB2 spot, backup quarterback in the future, but I want to get the main starting positions out of the way. So this one is free safety. Of course, the Giants have a hole there. Antoine Bethea was the guy there last year. He moved over to strong safety when Jabril Peppers went out. Then we saw Julian Love man that position, had success in the final quarter of the season. So he's an option next year as well. I'll get into him later. And yeah, so the Giants definitely have a void there. And I mean, Antoine Bethea probably won't be back next year. I think they save a couple $1 million, or at least a few $1 if they cut him. So hopefully that's the case. He definitely underperformed last year in my mind. So they could upgrade at that position. And there's a lot of good free agents, honestly, for the safety position this offseason. Of course, the franchise tags and re-signings haven't really happened yet, but we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. But these are some guys that I think have realistic options, and even some guys in the draft that could go to the Giants and be some day one starters. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and let's get into it. So we will start with the NFL draft class, and there's two safeties that probably should go in the first round this year, one being Xavier McKinney and one being Grant Delpit. McKinney from Alabama and Delpit from LSU. So we'll get into Grant Delpit first. His stats in 3 seasons: 120 solo tackles, 8 interceptions, 7 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Showed he can be relied on in coverage against opposing tight ends, but does have a tackling issue, and that definitely can be sorted out with the right head coaches, or not head coaches, but the right, secondary coaches and whatnot. So you can coach that out of him, but sometimes he's inconsistent on the tackles. But outside of that, it looks like he'll be a really good safety in the NFL. So if he can clean up the tackling issue, he should be fine and should be a first-round option. The problem is the Giants probably won't, won't be on the clock when he goes, probably, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, he won't go 4th overall. I don't think he'll go 4th overall, but maybe the Giants try to trade back in the first round. Maybe he falls to the second round early. I mean, I doubt it, but we could see what happens. I mean, I think the most likely scenario if the Giants were to get Grant Delpit or Xavier McKinney is to trade up for those guys. So this, isn't too realistic, but you never know. He did trade up for DeAndre Baker last year, so I guess anything could happen. So for Xavier McKinney, he was a 2-year starter. 108 solo tackles, 5 interceptions, 6 sacks, and 6 forced fumbles. That's a lot. So he's a little shorter than Delpit, doesn't really have the type of body type that he has, but McKinney is a safer pick in most people's minds. He can cover any type of receiver, running back, tight end, wide receiver, and basically has the versatility to play the strong safety and free safety position, so that's definitely appealing. I personally think McKinney will go first, before Delpit, not first overall, but before Delpit. I think he'll be the first safety off the board is what I'm trying to say. So I think he is the safer prospect. I think Delpit has the higher ceiling, so we'll see. I mean, if Delpit goes to the right coaching staff and whatnot, they could make that work, and I mean, he definitely has a higher ceiling in my mind, but McKinney's probably the safer player. Do I see the Giants getting either of these guys? Probably not, but these are options because these are probably day one starters in the NFL for whatever team they go to. So this one we've heard before, definitely from Alex, who I do the podcast with. He's big on the Devin McCourty train. So Devin McCourty, the one bad thing about him is he's a bit up there in age, but outside of that, he's a very intriguing option. So he's been consistent for about a decade now. I think it's been 10 seasons in the NFL for him. He definitely fills a void at free safety, played under Joe Judge in New England, adds veteran leadership and can actually play, unlike Antoine Bethea. I mean, Bethea brought the veteran leadership, which was nice, but really didn't have a lot left in the tank as a player, but McCourty definitely does. His PFF grade in 2019 was 80.7. That's really good. I mean, anything above like a 70 is good, so 80.7, really good. Probably wouldn't cost a ton of money. He probably would get like a 1 or 2 year contract, maybe $7-8 million annually. It won't be a crazy amount, so that's definitely good. Hasn't missed a game since 2015 and had over 14 games played in every season, so he's definitely not an injury risk or anything like that. I mean, I'll give Antoine Bethea credit. I don't think he missed a game last year, but Devin McCourty probably would not miss a game either, honestly, so that's a good thing. Had 5 interceptions and 7 pass deflections in 2019, so 5 interceptions is a lot. I mean, it's not sustainable. I mean, maybe it is, I don't know, but we saw Alec Ogletree with 5 last year. Definitely was not sustainable. So I don't expect McCourty to do 5 again next year. I think he had 1 like the previous 5 years in a row. So he had 1 in 2018, 1 in 2017, 1 in 2016. So I guess 5 was his big outlier year. But still, he's good at playing the pass and a lot better than the safeties we have now, at least. He had 19 receptions allowed on 30 targets, which is it's not great, especially for a safety, but it's not bad either. It's not terrible. I could live with that. The one downside is his age. I think he's 33 or 34 years old now. I think he's 33 next year. So the one, possibly bad thing is him breaking down at the wrong time, kind of like Antoine Bethea did. I mean, Bethea had a pretty good career up until 2019 season, so maybe if McCourty comes over here and he's washed, it won't be a good contract. But if he plays the way he did last year, it would definitely be a massive improvement in my mind. So if they get him for the right money and McCourty wants to play here, I don't know if he wants to leave his brother Jason in New England by himself, but ultimately, we'll see. I mean, money talks, obviously, and we'll see who gives him the most money. But look, he probably would return to New England if I had to guess, but maybe he wants to come back and play for the team where he's from. I think he's from New Jersey. He went to Rutgers, so a local team for him and play for the Giants, it's a possibility. But if I had to guess, I'd probably say he stays in New England. Up next is Justin Simmons, probably the best free agent safety out there. Maybe Anthony Harris with the Vikings, but he plays strong safety, so this is probably the best free safety on the market. So Simmons, really broke out, I think, last year, but, this year had a terrific year. I went back and watched some of his tape. He is a phenomenal player and will probably make a lot of money. So the market value for him is $14 million per year. So obviously that's a lot of money, especially for a safety, but this guy seems like he's worth it. Definitely the best free safety on the market, as I said. Over 93 combined tackles in 2018 and 2019. I think it was 97 either last year or this year, then 93 the year before. So makes a lot of tackles, makes a lot of plays. Still only 26 years old, entering his prime, so that's definitely a good age to hit free agency for the first time. Had 7 interceptions combined the last 2 seasons. Most likely stays with Denver in my mind. So Denver has a few pretty big free agents coming up, but I think Simmons being 26 years old and emerging as one of the best safeties in the league, I'd be surprised personally if he left, but we'll see what happens, obviously. PFF graded him a 90.8, which is like an elite number in 2019. That's great. 25 receptions allowed on 47 targets. That's a great number. I saw this guy playing coverage in his highlights. Really good in coverage. Was covering everybody, wide receivers, tight ends, running backs. He had a play against Tariq Cohen last year. That was great. We remember Tariq Cohen against Landon Collins a couple years ago. Not a good outcome, but this guy against Tariq Cohen, good outcome. He was beat too on the play, but he somehow has long arms, very lanky guy, got his arm in there, broke up the play. Very nice job by him. So his workout metrics actually, they say he's good with the catch radius, his burst score, and agility score. So he does have some, downside. He does have a 4.61 40 time, and his speed score is in the 25th percentile, so that's not great. But with the body he has, I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", a lanky guy with long arms, as I said. You can get away with that. You don't have to be that fast, especially playing safety. If you're a cornerback and you're not fast, and sometimes that can affect you, but playing safety, if you take the right angles and you're still making plays and you're making tackles, it's really not going to matter all that much. Obviously, you'd want your safeties to be faster, but a 4.6 40 is not going to kill you. So this guy would be a phenomenal pickup. He's probably one of the better safeties in the league and definitely would probably have a better year next year. He's probably going to get better, honestly. But as I said before, I expect him to stay with Denver, whether it's via the franchise tag or whether they work out a big contract with him. 26 years old. I would personally be thrilled if they sign him. $14 million is a lot, but I think this guy's an excellent player and will probably continue to get better. But probably not a realistic option, but I wanted to put him in here because he is the best option, and I know you guys will probably ask about him. So yeah, I'm definitely on board. I'm sold. He's a great player, and I would love to see him on the Giants. I just don't see it happening if I'm being realistic. Up next is Damarious Randall, the Cleveland Browns safety. So he had a 69.3 grade from PFF in 2019, which is pretty good. 13 receptions on 21 targets. Could have been better, but not terrible either. He'll be 27 years old next year. Did miss 5 games this year due to a concussion, hamstring issues, and was actually benched 1 game for a coach's decision, so we'll get into that in a little bit. His best comparable for his athleticism and whatnot, his athletic profile, is actually Devin McCourty, which is pretty funny because we just talked about him before. So he wasn't active in a game against Pittsburgh, their second meeting, so I think what happened was he had a targeting call and was ejected in the game the first time they played Pittsburgh, so I don't know if it was because because of that or something else, but there were some reports that he refused to practice that week. Obviously, the Browns had a very rough year last year, but the good news is the Giants have Freddie Kitchens on their staff, so if they were interested in Randall, they can probably ask Kitchens, like, hey, does this guy, does he have his head on straight or whatnot? They can probably get, the answer from Kitchens right there and find out if he's the guy they want to bring in the building or not. So, Randall is solid in all areas and definitely won't demand like top safety money. I'm sure he'll try to make the most money possible, but won't get paid as much as the Justin Simmons, Anthony Harris type guys, Jimmie Ward type guys. So I'd personally be surprised if he returns to Cleveland in 2020, especially with a new head coach. Seems like the relationship there was not great with the Browns, and whatever happened last year, I know it was a different coach, but still, he definitely looks like he overstayed his welcome there. He was a former first-round pick. I didn't write this down, but I think he was a late first-round pick in like 2015, whatever it was, 2016, by the Packers. So a first-round talent, obviously. He had 14 interceptions from 2015 to 2018. Did not have any in 2019, but 14 in a 4-season span's a lot, so that's really good. 2.5 sacks and 61 combined tackles in 2019, even missing 5 games. So that's not too bad. When the guy plays, he's a solid player. Once again, an upgrade from Antoine Bethea. Still just 27 years old. But personally, I'm concerned about why he was benched by a coach's decision last year. You don't want to see that, especially for a team like the Browns that had a lot of struggles in their secondary. They had young guys in their secondary, some injuries early in the season as well. And, Randall was part of it, but still, to get benched in a division game when the Browns were playing for the playoffs at that point in the year, probably, it's kind of surprising. So we'll see if Kitchens has the answer, but I think once again he'd be an improvement. We'll see if they give him, it depends what kind of contract he gets. Obviously, I don't want to give this guy $10 million plus per year, but if it's a reasonable $6 to $8 million per year contract for 2 or 3 years, I can definitely live with that for Damarious Randall. Up next is Tre Boston of the Carolina Panthers. So he played all 16 games in 2019, 68 combined tackles and 3 interceptions last year. 27 years old currently. He'll be 28 by the start of next year. He was drafted in the 4th round by Dave Gettleman in 2014 for Carolina. So he was drafted by Carolina, had a couple other stops with the Chargers and the Arizona Cardinals, I believe. Then went back to the Panthers this year. So it was weird. Tre Boston was a guy who was not signed for a while, definitely was a late signing. And he actually, if you follow the Giants closely, you probably know about this, had a visit with the Giants last year. So for some reason, the Giants passed on him. I guess they were looking for more safety depth, but they did not take him, and I wish they did, honestly, looking back on it. Would have been a better option than Antoine Bethea, but the Giants let him go. He eventually went to Carolina, had a pretty good year there, 8 receptions allowed on 16 targets, has always been solid in coverage. His one issue, though, is the tackling. It can be inconsistent. Sometimes it's not so good in run support, so that's an issue, but the good news is they have Jabril Peppers, who is good in run support, so maybe it evens itself out, but still, you'd want a free safety that does everything well, obviously. He played for 3 different teams in the last 3 years, so that's a little puzzling. Don't know why it happened exactly. Boston's not an elite player, but he's still a pretty good player, so it's surprising to see a guy, especially in his mid-20s, bounce around team to team to team in a span of 3 years and even be a late signing in free agency last year. Probably would still be an upgrade over Antoine Bethea, so Bethea might be a little better tackler, but Tre Boston's a lot better in coverage, so I think Boston wins that battle there. He probably won't cost as much as guys like McCourty and Justin Simmons, so that's definitely good news. He's still only 28 years old, 27 currently, as I said, so you know what you're getting here. He's a 76.4 rating by PFF in 2019. You're getting a guy who could play good coverage as a free safety, and play that center fielder position basically, just eye the quarterback, hopefully make some plays on deep passes and whatnot, cover the opposing tight ends and stuff like that, but might not be great on run support, and obviously the Giants want complete players and guys that can do everything, so Tre Boston might not be a legitimate option, but he does have that relationship with Dave Gettleman, being the guy that drafted him in the 4th round in 2014, so it is possible. These guys definitely know each other, and if Boston's sitting out there on the free agent list once again for a while, maybe he comes into the Giants once again, and maybe this time they actually sign him, so we'll see. And the last player we'll dive into here, of course, there's more options. I'll list some names at the end of this, but Jimmie Ward for the San Francisco 49ers Ward played in 13 games last year. He's had some injuries in the past. We'll go over those later. 65 combined tackles and 8 passes defended in 2019. Does have a decent-sized injury history the last few years especially. Hasn't played more than 13 games since 2015. He did play all 16 that year, but that was 5 years ago at this point. He will be pretty costly and demand top safety money. I mean, the guy's 28 years old, 29 next year, so he's at that point coming off of a phenomenal year. Did play 3/4 of the season for a really good team, so why not try and get the bag at this point in his career? Probably the last time he'll get a big contract in his career, honestly. So he'll probably seek out a lot of money. The Giants do have a lot of cap space, probably more than the 49ers, honestly, because they're paying a lot of guys. I mean, Tevin Coleman comes to mind. Quan Alexander comes to mind. Who else? They paid Xavier McKinney even a lot of money, Jimmy Garoppolo. So, yeah, they have a lot of, big names under contract. They have to pay George Kittle as well, so they might not be able to afford all these guys. He allowed 13 receptions on 23 targets. Not terrific, but not bad either. PFF graded him an 84.2 last season, which is really good. I mean, it's not Justin Simmons at a 90, but still, 84.2 is a good number, and he's a great tackler. I mean, I watched this guy on tape once again. I mean, I like to watch these guys before talking about them because I'd feel like an idiot if I didn't watch them play first. But Jimmie Ward, of course, I've watched him play before, but he's just a really good tackler. I mean, you see this guy, sometimes there's like a 4th and 1 play or there's like a one-on-one situation with a wide receiver on the outside. He'll dive at your legs, take you out. He makes some big hits as well, but does it legally. He's not, head hunting and stuff like that. He'll hit you in the midsection. That sounds wrong, but the strike zone area when you're tackling somebody is what I'm trying to say. Does that correctly, has the right technique and whatnot, so he won't give you stupid penalties, hopefully. So I'm sure coaches would love that. And look, as long as he's on the field, he's a great player. But the one thing is, do you want to throw a lot of money at a guy who's sometimes injury prone? I mean, if I go back to his games, I think he played like 11 games one year, I think 9 games one year, and then like 7. So, I mean, he hasn't been too consistent when playing, but when he's out there, he's really good. So, luckily for him, he played 13 games this year, but you should probably not bank on getting the full 16 out of him. So, personally, I would not give him that Justin Simmons type $14 million per year contract because he'll be 30 years old soon. His body will probably break down at some point, unfortunately. But if he were to stay healthy and you told me he was going to play all 16 games on his contract, I would definitely be interested. But the injury history scares me, honestly. And honestly, I feel like the Niners would probably try to keep him. I don't think they want to let him go. He's still a very good player. He's been a Niner his whole career, I believe. So they probably want to keep him, but I don't know if they can actually afford that. So if it wasn't for the injuries, I'd be very intrigued. But due to that, I'd probably have to say I'd pass on Jimmie Ward. So lastly, I'll touch on Julian Love and some other free agents out there. So, I mean, Julian Love, we saw him play free safety like the second half of the year, especially after Jabril Peppers got hurt when they moved Antoine Bethea over to strong safety. And look, Julian Love definitely held his own. He had maybe a couple of bad moments with missed tackles, but outside of that, I was pretty impressed. I mean, we drafted him as an outside corner. They flirted with the idea of playing him at slot corner, eventually moved him to safety, and was really good. I mean, look, he had to learn a lot of positions, obviously, from playing outside corner in college to just basically over the summer learning to play safety. He was really good. I mean, he has a lot of upside. I loved him in college. I was happy when we drafted him. Definitely has a lot of potential. A 4th-round pick, I believe he was. And when he was out there, he was fine. You have to assume he'd probably get better. I don't expect a guy like Julian Love to just regress all of a sudden. I think he'll get even better next year. So it really depends what this coaching staff wants to do because the Giants do have a hole at slot corner. So if they want to put Love at slot corner, that's a possibility. But if you're a nerd and watch, preseason football like I do, you remember that in the preseason when Julian Love was playing slot corner, he did get burnt a few times. I mean, I remember the Jamison Crowder out route, pick play, whatever it was. There was one play with, it might have been Tyler Boyd against the Bengals when they were in Cincinnati, I think week 3 of the preseason, maybe week 4, whatever it was. So there's a couple things that come to mind when him playing slot corner that wasn't so good, but during the season, he was a lot better. Did miss some tackles, as I said, but for the most part, was good. So I think if you give him a full offseason to know what position he's going to play, he'd be a lot better. So I'd be fine with that if the Giants announce Julian Love as our free safety next next year. Won't hear anything bad out of me. Some other guys that could play free safety here. I mean, you have Clinton-Dix, who was drafted by the Packers. I think a first-round pick, was with the Bears last year on a one-year, prove-it type deal. He was really good last year, had a terrific year for them, so, he's not the greatest option out there. There's some, guys I listen to this video that are better than him, but still, he's an option. Rodney McLeod from the Eagles. I mean, he had a rough year last year with the injuries. I think 2018 was injured as well. So, he's now, I think, 2 years off of those injuries. So he'll come back next year, hopefully healthy. He'll be 30 years old next year, coming from a division rival, so that'd be nice to get him over here, and it's definitely a possibility. I talked about Tony Jefferson in the other video. I mean, he does play strong safety. I think moving him to linebacker might be a legitimate option, but it's really up to him. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not really any other names I'm looking right now. There's nothing else, a free safety that I really like here. So, of course, Anthony Harris from the Vikings does play strong safety, so that's not really a legitimate option, not really a need for us right now, especially if Jabril Peppers is going to play all year for us. Hopefully, let's hope he plays 6 games, or 16 games, not 6. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I got for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know which guy you want to play free safety next year, or should we just keep Julian Love? Do you want to sign somebody? Do you want to draft somebody? Or just stay in-house and move number 24 to free safety full-time? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you next time.